Okay, so welcome everyone, mashallah, to the Sunday morning Zoom class. I always like to remind myself and you that our vision is to come from a place of peace. And when you connect with I.S.L.A.M, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the source of peace, then you can come from that space. And when you come from that source of peace, you will find that you're not angry, you're not frustrated, you're not irritable, you're not edgy. And so with that usually comes a non-judgmental attitude as well. So with this, let us all strive to not judge, to not condemn, to not castigate, but to only say that which is loving and that which is beautiful and eloquent and that which edifies and exhorts and builds each other up as a family, inshallah. That is certainly part of our mission here, and also to conduct da'wah. And just a reminder, the Faith Club is the 20th of September at the United Methodist Church in Claremont at 10 o'clock. Islamophobia will be on September the 24th at the Unitarian Universalist Church at New Smyrna Beach. Radical Welcome will be at UU Ormond on October the 29th, and Miriam and I.S.L.A.M will be at the UU Church in New Smyrna Beach on December the 24th, which I think is very interesting that we will be presenting the mother of I.S.L.A.M on Christmas Eve there. So we are looking for someone to host the potluck for September the 16th, if anyone is interested in having it at their home. Our house is in disarray due to flood repairs. They are coming in Tuesday to start tearing out baseboards from the flood, or replacing the baseboards, repainting the house. So this wouldn't be conducive for us to have the potluck on the 16th of September. And just to put it in your diary in advance, there will be no class on October the 1st and October the 8th, as inshallah we will be in California. I will be officiating a wedding there, inshallah. So in terms of joys, Dean spent his first night with us last night, obviously with his parents, Camila and Leif, and it was such a joy. I think I reached the orange zone on the treadmill just because I was motivated by having that young life in the house. I always go to a class most of the time before I teach on Sunday morning. So we pray for all the new parents, for Jamal and Megan, for Angelica, for Bernard and Claudette, just, all of the beautiful families that are raising children, that have babies. We ask Allah to guide the parents and to guide those babies to be among the righteous Muslims, among those who are the torchbearers of Islam. And of the joys, we still celebrate Mika's brother and wife getting here, getting their visas. We still pray for Rosie's son, Michael, who has testicular cancer and being treated for that. For James, Julie, and Maysoon to find work, employment that will give them a life of abundance, inshallah, exceeding abundance. We continue to pray for Ridwana's mother, who had a knee replacement surgery and is in recovery. It is my understanding, I believe, that Ridwana is still in New Jersey providing care for her mother. So if there are any other dua, supplication requests, you can let us know right now. I'll just pause a minute to see if there's anything else that anyone needs prayer for. Or okay. Very good. So I just wanted to do a 2-minute review of last week's class. That specific passage that we looked at dove into understanding the divine nature and human existence through concepts like ineffability, which is the indescribable, and inscrutability, which is that which is impossible to understand. And the creator self connection, that God infusion piece that we talked about. And then I just want to quickly recap on the main points because we are each week building. This is actually building on our understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this particular chapter. Attributes of Allah's purity and sanctity we talked about last week. And the passage suggested that introspection, that tadabbur, that deep contemplation and reflection about Allah and how Allah shows us the signs in ourselves and in the universe actually helps us recognize similarities between human attributes and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's essence. And if you think about essence, it's very powerful because if I have a small vial of any kind of oil, peppermint oil, maybe the oil of eucalyptus, in that small bottle, I will not know its essence if it's not labeled. But once I open it, that essence, a little bit, that oil essence spills out. But I don't experience the oil. I just experience the aroma. And so I always think about that when we are looking at how to understand the law. We are getting just the essence. And it's all based on things that we can understand, correlations that we can make. And then Imam Ghazali takes us into looking at the body and how we manage the body and how similar that is to the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala manages the universe. And so this actually involves the understanding that Allah's incomparability and sanctity transcends imaginable attributes. So anything that you can imagine, anything that I can imagine, anything that we can imagine, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala transcends that. So we just get that essence. We don't get the biological breakdown of the eucalyptus oil, the chemical compounds of the vanilla flavoring or whatever that essence is we're smelling. Just as we cannot understand Allah fully. It transcends our imagination. And it's interesting when you think about it, your imagination again is connected to the five senses, which are very connected to your nafs, which I think is a very interesting correlation. So we talked about ineffability and indivisibility, how the spirit cannot be divided. And the passage highlights how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's formless, immeasurable nature extending to the self and aspects like the spirit. So you can't divide your spirit, your ruh, that God infusion is not divisible. You can take your physical body and have a hand amputated or an arm amputated or a leg, but the spirit that Allah infused us with is not divisible. So it underscores the fruitlessness of discussing ineffable and inscrutable aspects. So those things that we cannot understand and those things that we cannot describe, it sort of underscores that it's sort of fruitless to maybe talk about it because you can't really do it justice, but we should contemplate to help us understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when we do use it, what do we always say afterwards? We say Allahu Alam. You know, the way I understand this is this, but it's inadequate, which we don't usually say. And so it's very powerful. Sensory perceptions and ineffability. Sensory perceptions like sight and sound are compared to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's incomprehensible nature. Both are beyond each other's scope. And spiritual sovereignty, we talked about that. The passage paralleled the human spirit's control over the body with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's control over the universe. What a sign that we see in the universe and within ourselves. And then again, we looked at without specific location limits. Allah doesn't have any limits. You and I can only be where we are. We can travel in our dreams, but our physical body will still be where we are. Another part of us that actually when the soul is away from Allah is only the time that we can travel in our dreams. When the soul is with Allah and we are asleep, sort of dead, we have a permission or possibility that we can go somewhere else in that state. It's very interesting. Divisibility and indivisibility. The indivisibility or the indivisible spirit's authority over the body mirrors Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's individual nature governing creation without specific attributes or attributions. And then we talked about understanding sanctification, the passage connected, comprehending human sanctification, where we try to purify ourselves and set ourselves apart for the work of Allah. And the passage connected, comprehended human sanctification to understanding Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sanctification, hinting at a deeper connection between human and divine essence. So in summary, what we looked at last Sunday explored understanding the ineffable aspects of existence to gain insight into Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's nature. So it urged us to reflect on creator-creation connection, recognizing attributes parallels, as it will deepen awareness of divine nature and human essence. And it's just amazing if we take the time to do this. Our hearts are nurtured. They are fortified. It's like taking a vitamin, a full spectrum vitamin for the physical body. When we reflect on the nature of God and we connect with that and we see parallel with our own self, doesn't that deepen your connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So inshallah, we will begin today's lecture in Alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruh wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. May yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa may yudlil fala hadiya lahu. Wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu rasuluh. Amma ba'd. All praise be to Allah. We seek Allah's help and forgiveness. We seek refuge with Allah from the evil in our souls and our bad deeds. Whom Allah guides will never be led astray, and whoever Allah leads astray, no one can guide. I bear witness there is no deity, there is no God but Allah, the one having no partners, and I bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's final slave and messenger. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. O you who have believed, fear Allah as Allah alone should be feared, and do not die except as Muslims in sweet surrender, in submission to Allah Azza wa Jalla. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبعث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. Will people be dutiful to your Lord, who created you from one soul and created from it its mate, and dispersed from both many men and women? And fear Allah, for whom you demand mutual rights, and revere the ones that bore you. Indeed, Allah is ever over you, al-Raqib, an observer. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. O you who have believed, fear Allah and speak words of appropriate justice. Allah will then amend for you your deeds and forgive you your sins, and whoever obeys Allah and Allah's messenger has certainly attained the greatest attainment. So today we are going to be focusing on the Gnosis, the experiential knowledge of God's management of his kingdom. And we're going to first look at what Imam Ghazali says, and then I will try to break it down for you and make it a little more simple. But I love to see what you come up with. So at the end of the class, I always love it if someone shares. And perhaps if you would, maybe you process what's in this class today or afterwards, and then maybe share next week a little bit about it. But I am trying to begin to recreate what we used to have. We used to meet in person after the class. We would have this group experience where people shared, and it was very valuable. So if you have some suggestions on how we can get a kickstart back on that, whether it's talk about the last class and this class, the current class, or however we could do it. But I really do love to hear feedback from the students, what they're learning, what they are gathering. It's very valuable. So Imam Ghazali began and he said, now the existence of the essence of God Most High has been made known. So we've been looking at this for the last couple of weeks. His attributes, his freedom from and sanctification beyond questions of how and why have been made known, and his immunity from the ascription to a locality and the key of all gnosis, modified experiential knowledge of the human self made known. One aspect of knowledge remains. So he basically says we've already looked at these things, and that is the knowledge of the nature of his management, of his rule in his kingdom. And I'm sure that you're already picking up on it, that this is going to be compared to the nature of how we manage with our spiritual essence and heart the kingdom of our soul. Because if that rules, our extremities will become the slaves of God. And if they don't, they will actually testify against us on the day of judgment for violating them. And this is made very clear in the Holy Quran. So how are such things, Imam Ghazali keeps going, how are such things as his commanding the angels and their obedience to him, the managing of affairs by the angels, the sending of commands from heaven to earth, the movement of the heavens and the stars, the tying the affairs of the earth's inhabitants to the heavens, and the entrusting of the key of sustenance to heaven carried out. These are powerful things to contemplate about. So he says, this is a tremendous chapter. These subject matters that we've been covering, and there are at least 5 more that we'll be covering just in understanding Allah, the sanctity of Allah. So he says this is a tremendous chapter in the gnosis, in the experiential knowledge of the Creator Most High. So I find that my experiential knowledge of Allah really does grow and expand as I'm sort of making these comparisons with how I'm supposed to do it. I'm supposed to emulate a piece of this. And it really takes, I deem by Allah, me to another level in terms of really feeling so connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he says, all of this is called the gnosis of the acts, the gnosis of the actions. And he says, as much as earlier we spoke of the gnosis of the essence, the modified that, and the gnosis of the attributes, which is the modified sifat. So when you say that we were doing the 67 classes that we did, and hopefully we'll finish it one day on the asma with sifat and Allah, you hear that word sifat. So this is an experiential knowledge that we have of those attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he says, the key to all of this is the experiential knowledge, the gnosis of the self, the understanding of your nafs. So I got to study what my nafs are doing that is sabotaging my spirit, my essence. Most of us want to run away from that. Most of us, when we see our nafs, we start avoiding people. What we want to do is embrace what is right and forbid what is wrong with beautiful words and eloquent speech. And we should be doing that to ourselves. So he goes on and he says, if you do not know how you rule your own kingdom, how can you expect to understand how the ruler of the universe manages affairs? So basically, he says, you will never understand this essence unless you look at yourself. Firstly, he says, come to know yourself and one of your own activities. And then he gives this amazing example. He said, if you wish to write the words Bismillah in the name of God on a piece of paper, he said, first the desire and will to do so appears in you. And I'm sure that many of you as reverts have gotten that excitement when you took an Arabic class and you wanted to write Bismillah. Write it in English or Arabic. He said, then a motion and movement occurs in your heart, not the outward heart of flesh situated towards the left inside your breast. He said, not the spiritual heart. He said, a tenuous substance moves from the heart and travels to the brain. Now, you see, in this context, he's pointing out the spiritual heart versus that word nafs that sometimes translated soul, heart, self. And this is why sometimes it is very difficult when you have more than one meaning for a word. You've got to really stop and see the context of what we are talking about here. So he says that this tenuous substance moves from our place of desire and travels to the brain. He said this weak, flimsy, negligible, fragile, shaky substance is what physicians call spirit. So sometimes you will hear non-believing people talk about, I like their spirit. I like their aura. Different people will use different ways to describe it. And he says, and it carries the power of perception and motion. And this is very powerful because remember how we've talked about the eyes, the physical eyes and the physical ears and the physical mouth gets a message, comes into our nafs, and then are we driven to obey the nafs or are we driven to obey the ruler of ourselves, which should be the spiritual heart? And he goes on and he says, this is a different spirit from that which the beasts also have and which is susceptible to death. That spirit, different spirit, which the beasts do not have, we call the heart, and it never perishes. So we have something the animals do not have. We have a heart that is the soul, is the ruh. And that heart is supposed to be driving our kingdom. The animals don't need that because they're not aliens on the earth. They were created for the earth. And if they're not domesticated, they actually do just fine without us. Animals can live in nature if non-domesticated. And Dr. I.S.L.A.M, being in the veterinarian world, maybe can share with us after. If you go in places where there are wild horses, and I've seen this in wild boar and things, they never have to have haircuts or any kind of maintenance because they are designed for this earth. We as humans are aliens. We came from the soul world again. We came from a different place and we're just here for, say, 80 years or something like that, however long a life gives us. And this is our testing ground. We don't fare well here. We are strangers here. We don't fare well here unless we take care of our teeth, we take care of our hair, we take care of our body. We are not like the animals. So we have this will, we have this ruh that Allah has infused us with. And he says, it is this ruh, or this heart, that is the seat of the knowledge of God. And remember, that heart, when it is filled with the intellect of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the sunnah of our beloved messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we obey that, we will be at peace. He said, when this spirit reaches the brain and the image of, in the name of God, now we're back to the writing exercise. When that spirit reaches the brain and the image of in the name of God, Bismillah, has been found in the repository at the front of the brain, which is the location of the faculty of the imagination, the result is transferred from the brain to the nerves and comes out of the brain and reach in all directions and are linked to the fingertips like threads that are visible on the forearm of a lean person. He says, then the nerves quicken and activate the fingertips. The fingers move the pen, and the pen moves the ink. Then the shape of Bismillah appears on the paper, just as it was in the repository of the imagination, with the aid of the senses, especially the eyes, which are necessary for writing. Consequently, the initiator of this action was the desire which appeared in you. So we see we have that spirit, that animal spirit in us, or heart, that is driven by desires. And Imam Ghazali, may Allah calls him to rest in peace, makes a beautiful correlation here. The beginning of all works is an attribute from among the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is sha, will. So we say inshallah, if Allah wills. Inshallah, I will do this. Inshallah. Imagine we are saying that, but then we are willing to follow our own nafs and desires instead of connect. We're not even connecting to Allah when we say inshallah sometimes. We sometimes even use it as a lie, because customarily, not according to the text, people will say, are you coming to my house? Inshallah. And they know full well they're not coming. In Surah 10, in chapter 16, say, if Allah had willed, I would not have recited it to you, nor would he have made it known to you, for I had remained among you a lifetime before. Then will you not reason? So he says, will you not think about this? Will you not contemplate about this? So just as the first effect of this will appear, or this will actually appears in your heart, then by its means, the effect reaches other places. So the first effect of the will of God Most High appears on the throne. Then it goes to other places. So think about it. The Holy Quran was brought down to the lower heavens. And then it was brought down to the earth by the angel Jibril over a period of 23 years. Let's look at it again. Take a deep breath and let's just ponder on this. Just as the first effect of this will appears in your heart, then by its means the effect reaches other places. So the first effect of the will of God Most High appears on the throne, then it goes to other places. Just as the tenuous, insubstantial substance resembling the vapor is transported by the conduits of the heart to the brain, the substance we call spirit, God Most High, has a tenuous essence which transports the effect from the throne to the pedestal. And the pedestal contextually here is the earth, because what's holding the heavens? The earth. He says the essence is called an angel, spirit, or the Holy Spirit. Well, Isa was called the Holy Spirit. Why? He brought a divine revelation to the people. As it reaches the brain from this heart, from the heart, and the brain is under the control of the spirit in its province and at its command, so the effect of God's will reaches the pedestal, reaches the earth. From the throne of God Most High, and the pedestal, earth, is beneath the throne. Look at this connection that we have to the very essence of law. Just as the form of Bismillah, which was your action and is your object, appears in the repository of the front of the brain, and the action is in accordance with that, the form of all which will appear in the world first appears in the preserved tablets. These preserved tablets are another whole lecture, but I just want to make sure everybody knows what I'm talking about here. The preserved tablets, where the Quran was revealed from Angel Jibril, where he got the information and brought it down to earth, is called Allahu mahfuz, the heavenly preserved record of all that has happened and will happen, contains qadr. So we know that this is discussed when the angel Jibril comes down again in the month of Ramadan, in the night of power. So Qadr, the night of Qadr, the night of power, the night of decree. All of this is connected, and we could just go so deep with. I could take really and truly every paragraph, and we could just make another lecture out of it. I want to try to stay focused on the point. Qadr in Arabic means fate, divine foreordained. That doesn't mean Allah controls, but it means Allah already has seen the script. Allah knows what's going to happen. We have will. We get to choose. Am I going to obey Allah, or am I going to obey my nafs? Imam Ghazali picks back up and he says, and as the tenuous, weak, flimsy faculty, which is in the brain, activates the nerves to activate the hand and the fingers, so that the fingers cause the pen to move, so does the tenuous essence in charge of the throne, the pedestal to earth, cause the sky together with the stars to move. Imagine that Allah is orchestrating the planetary movement, and we are never still. Yet we think we're still. Everything, the molecular structure of everything is vibrating, and the world is spinning as everything is vibrating. And as the faculty of the brain, through the connection of bones and nerves, moves the finger, that tenuous essence, which we call the angels, sets the dispositions of the elements of the world by means of celestial bodies and their links of light beams to the lower world, because Allah has given them this responsibility, and they never rebel, and they just never rebel. That's why we want to be like the angels, so we'll never rebel. We'll say, Allah said this, therefore I'm going to obey. He says they are called the four temperaments. And if you remember, we talked about the four temperaments. We talked about medicine in the time of the Greeks. He said they are called the four temperaments: hot, cold, moist, or dry. Sometimes we are spiritually hot. Sometimes we are spiritually cold. Sometimes we are spiritually dry. And sometimes we're just filled with the rain. We are flooded. Even our eyes flood. We are filled with moisture. Because we are so connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we examined this, remember, in a previous class. And he goes on and he said, and as the pen scatters the ink and forms it, Bismillah, until the shape of Bismillah appears, this heat, cold water, and earth moves the elements of this compound. Remember, the paper is from trees. And this the paper receives the ink. As it is spread upon it, the ink, or collected, moisture enables the heat to be shaped, while dryness becomes the keeper of that shape, preserving it, and does not let go of it. If there were no moisture, the ink could not be shaped into words. If there were no dryness, the shape could not be preserved. When you pick it up, it would run down the paper. I used to love fountain pens. And I still do, but they're so messy. They can be. But I just love to write with a fountain pen, and it's just beautiful to watch that liquid come on that paper. And then you can't touch it because it'll smudge it, and let it dry. It's really an experience to write with a fountain pen. He said, and when the pen has finished its work completely, and brought its movements to an end, the form of Bismillah, in accordance with the design that was in the repository of imagination, appears with the aid of the eye. In the same manner as heat and cold bring the elements of the ink into motion, the form of plants, animals, etc., come into existence in this world, the agency of the angels in accordance with the image which is on the preserved tablets from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are obeying Allah. We are obeying Allah, inshallah. The preserved tablets are our guide, just as they are for the angels. At the beginning of the action in all the body springs from the heart and then is diluted to all the organs. So the beginning of the works in the world of physical bodies that appears in the throne. And as the first receiver of that quality is the heart, and the rest beneath it are attached to the heart, so that it is thought that you reside in your heart. What a place to live. To live. In the experiential knowledge of Allah in the Quran, and an experiential knowledge of our beloved Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And as the first receiver of that quality is the heart, and the rest beneath it are attached to the heart, so that it is thought that you reside in your heart, since the mastery of God Most High is by means of the understanding, by means of the throne. It is through that he resides in the throne. And as you have mastery over your heart and arrange its affairs, you can manage the kingdom of your body as God Most High made the management of his kingdom become with the creation of the throne, the master of the throne. The throne stands straight and even. And the words came thus from chapter 10 of the Holy Quran, verse 3. He established himself upon the throne, directing all things. Imagine that we connect to the throne of Allah, to that place where his word was delivered, and it runs us, it manages, and has sovereignty over our kingdom. He says, know that all this is truth. And if it's been made known to the prudent through external revelation, and the truth of this meaning was learned, truly God, may he be honored and glorified, created humankind in his image. And I talked about this before so that there would be no confusion about this. And I explained this last week. And know truly that no one other than the kings knows kingship and sovereignty. If it were not that you had been given rule over your own kingdom of the body, and be given a brief copy of the kingship and Lord of the universe, you would never be able to comprehend the God of the world. You see, we learn about Allah and we only say what Allah has said about Allah. Otherwise, we are entering into shirk. He says, so give thanks to that king who created you and gave you a dominion and a kingdom. Spend your time managing that dominion and that kingdom and stay out of the dunya business. He says it's so beautiful. He says, so give thanks to that king who created you. Gave you a dominion and a kingdom, a proof giver for his own kingdoms and for the heart which he made as your throne. He has made the animal spirit, the source of which is the heart, your Israfil. And this is powerful, folks. Israfil is the angel who blows the trumpet to signal Kiyama, the day of judgment. So imagine if the knowledge of Israfil were to always be in our heart, and we would be thinking about that day when there is no shade but Allah, how our spiritual hearts would be affected and how we would turn to Allah. Though unnamed in the Quran, Israfil is one of the 4 archangels in Islamic tradition, along with Mikael, Jabril, and Asrael. The Book of Deeds described as Israfil is as the oldest of all archangels. Look at the relationship that we have with Israfil. Israfil writes with the pen, kalam. So when we say kalam, kalam Allah is the speech of God, or that which Allah has said, that which was recorded. Israfil writes with the pen, kalam, the destiny of humans and all commands of God to the other archangels. It is said that with another wing, Israfil carries the pen. With another, Israfil covers his face, unable to look at God. Just as Israfil is mentioned in a hadith as the angel nearest to God, mediating the commands of God to other archangels. And we have the capacity, if we connect to our ruh, to be connected to this angel, to be visited by Jabril on the night of power. Our hearts connected to the throne of God. Although the name Israfil does not appear in the Quran, a figure blowing a trumpet is repeatedly alluded to and is assumed to be this figure, Allahu Alam. But in Surah 39, verse 68, and the trumpet shall be blown. So all those that are in the heaven and all those that are in the earth shall swoon, except him whom Allah wills. Then it shall be blown again. Then they shall stand up awaiting. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made your brain your pedestal, and out of your repository images a preserved tablet. So perhaps we look into this, the brain. This brain is like the earth, very connected to the earth. But our ruh, we want it to be connected to the preserved tablets. Imam Ghazali goes on and he says, He has made your angels out of your eyes and ears and all of your senses. He has made your sky and stars out of the dome of the brain, which is the source of the nerves of the heart. He has subordinated the elements to your fingers and pen and ink. He has created you unique, ineffable, and inscrutable, and has made you the king over all. You can be the king of your nafs, or you can be the king of your ruh. And then he said to you, take care, do not neglect yourself and your rule. For you will have neglected your own creator. When you are neglecting your rule and plugged into your mass, you are neglecting your owner, your master, the Lord of the universe, as I am too. For verily, God created us in his image. So know that and know thyself. To know thyself is to know Allah. O human being, and thou wilt know thy Lord, he says. So let's summarize, inshallah. This passage explores the concept of divine governance, divine sovereignty, drawing parallels between the way humans perform actions and how God manages the universe. He uses the analogy of writing a phrase to illustrate the complex nature of God's management and control of the creation. Let's break down the main points. The first one being understanding divine governance. The passage aims to shed light on the nature of God's management of his kingdom. This involves understanding how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's commands are carried out, how angels obey Allah, how affairs are managed in the universe, and how elements of creation are orchestrated. One of the points is the three types of experiential knowledge of Gnosis. The passage refers to three types of knowledge or Gnosis: the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's essence, the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's attributes, and the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's acts. These correspond to understanding Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's fundamental nature, his qualities, and the way he governs the world. The key to all of this, my beloved brothers and sisters, and I pray that you never get tired of this, because this is the way to elevate in your ranks as seekers of the divine in the pursuit of happiness. It's the only way, folks. So in case the shaitan whispers to you that I'm beating a dead horse and I'm saying the same thing over and over again, I think if you go back and look at the classes, you'll see that that's not true. Listen to this. Gnosis of the self is key. Just as self-knowledge was emphasized earlier as the key to understanding Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's essence and attributes, it is now presented as the key to comprehending his acts of governance. It's even the key to understand other beings and how they work at the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The idea is that understanding how one rules their own domain provides insight into how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala governs the universe. An analogical explanation is made through writing. The passage uses the example of writing the phrase Bismillah, in the name of God, to illustrate the sequence of events that occur when an action is performed. It starts with desire and will, involves the movement of spirit from the heart to the brain, and proceeds through various steps until the desired outcome is achieved. Parallel to divine action, this process is compared to how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will is executed in the universe. Just as a person's desire initiates an action, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will initiates events. The spirit that carries out the divine will is likened to angels or divine agents who transmit the effects of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will. That's why if you are connected to Allah and you are a mutaqi, you are a person who possesses taqwa, you will be a change agent. Hierarchy and order is also found in this passage today. The passage suggests a hierarchy order in divine governance. Just as the spirit activates various parts of the body to execute an action, angels are seen as carrying out Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's commands from the throne to the earth, from the throne to the pedestal. Reserved tablet and creation is another point we talked about. Just as an idea forms in the brain before being transferred to the nerves and executed by the hand, the passage asserts that forms of all things first appear in the preserved tablet, a metaphysical concept, and then they manifest in the physical world. He talked about the elements of governance. The passage connects the movement of elements, heat, cold, water, earth, to the action of the angels. Just as the elements move ink to create words, they are directed by the angels to shape various aspects of the physical world. And then in this passage, we talked a little bit about mastery and control. The passage emphasizes that just as the person manages their body through their heart's control, God manages the universe through his mastery over the throne. The concept of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's residence in the throne is explained as analogous to how a person is perceived to reside in their spiritual heart. Divine establishment. The passage concludes with a reference to Surah 10, verse 3, suggesting that God established himself upon the throne, directing all things. This reinforces the idea of God's supreme governance over creation. And if what was placed in that throne is in our hearts, then we will be like the angels, and we will be pure, and we will achieve the purification of the heart. This passage employs the analogy of writing to help readers grasp the complexity of divine governance and control. It underscores the interconnectedness between human actions and divine management, suggesting that understanding the former can provide insight into the latter. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta. Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Transcendent are you, O Allah, and praise be to you as you praise yourself. I bear witness that there is no deity save you. I seek your forgiveness and I repent to you. Know that I love you all for the sake of Allah.